So what we'll do is just go ahead and get started. I want to be in the interest of time. I don't know how this normally goes, but if people like to come in late, that's no big deal. We're just gonna go ahead and get started so we can end on time, right? So this is 2:30 to 3:45. And so I'm Courtney Teasley. I'm excited to be here with you all. I am excited to do this lecture. It is one that comes from our series of advocating for the least of us. And so we got with Dr. G, we went down to the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference. We had a great time, saw a lot, learned a lot. We came back and I am excited to lecture about We Are Community, a blueprint for justice ministry in unjust times. Jesus' first public sermon, right, in Luke 4:18 through 19 was not just a spiritual declaration, it was a radical call to action. He declared that his anointing was for the poor, the captives, the oppressed, those crushed under unjust systems. So he said, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. It's Luke 4:18 through 19. Jesus did not separate faith from justice, and so thankful for the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference. Shout out to Reverend Damien Durr, because I was able to see that in real time. He was a disruptor of systems that oppress the marginalized, and if we claim to follow him, we must do the same. The Politics of Jesus by Aubrey Hendricks reminds us that Jesus was not neutral, right? His ministry was a threat to those in power. He called out injustice, flipped systems upside down, and centered the least of these. And yet today, the Black church, which was the engine of our liberation movements, is largely silent in the fight against the racial system of control, which is mass incarceration. Justice is labeled as political, yet Jesus' ministry was political, right? We are spiritually strong, but socially silent, allowing systems to harm, to thrive. So what are we here to do today? Right? We are here to reclaim the church's power as a force for justice. This is not just a conversation. This is a blueprint. This is not just about what's wrong. This is about how we fix it. And this is not just a history lesson. This is a movement that must begin today. For the next 2 days, we are diving deep into mindset, how we got here, why the criminal and reactive mindset must be disrupted, finesse, the strategic and proactive ways to fight back in real time, and then non-negotiable boundaries, the tangible steps the church must take to provide protection, oversight, and systemic disruption. So what is justice? Now, it is biblical faith-rooted justice, justice that is not just inspired by moral conviction, but demanded by the word of God. And Tim Keller, thank you, Dr. G, defines biblical justice as equity for all people, not just the privileged, right? Repairing what has been broken, not just offering charity, and a right relationship with God and others, which means dismantling systems that hard. And then Robert Linthicum states that as Christians, we are called to see the world as it is, and then work to make it as it should be. That means we can no longer accept systems of oppression such as mass incarceration, police brutality, and racial injustice as just the way things are. It is our job to disrupt and demand change. But now, let us transition this space like I do with my clients. I like to come into coaching sessions or advocacy trainings. I want to transition this space for unapologetic disruptive awareness. Okay? And we're going to be dealing with some uncomfortability. We're going to be challenging some thought processes here. So before we do that, I like to do it with 3 deep breaths, okay? And so we're going to breathe in deeply. You're going to breathe with me on that 3rd breath. We're going to let it out really loud, all right? And then the space has been transitioned for us to focus here. All right? Breath 1, breathe in. Hold it at the top. 3, 2, 1. Let it out. Yes, that feels good. Breath 2, breathe in. Hold it at the top. 3, 2, 1. Let it out. This last one we're going to let out really loud. All the stuff you've been doing today and all that food you just ate, right? Breathe in. Hold it at the top. 3, 2, 1. Let it out loud. All right. space has been transitioned, and the question I want you all to take a few minutes to consider comes from none other than MLK himself. As he pondered upon the Black Power movement and their disappointment with America, he said, and where do we go from here? It is disappointment with the Christian church that appears to be more white than Christian. It is disappointment with some Negro clergymen who are more concerned about the size of the wheelbase on their automobiles than about the quality of their service to the Negro community. And it is disappointment with the Negro middle class that has sailed or struggled out of the muddy ponds into the relatively fresh flowing waters of the mainstream, and in the process has forgotten the stench of the backwaters where their brothers are still drowning. And so I now pose this question to you, and as I'll be doing throughout, you can write it down or put it in the notes section of your phone. Write these questions, because I do want you to ponder upon them before session 2 tomorrow when we get into the strategies. What is the quality of your service to the Negro community? What is the quality of your service to the Negro community? And so I'll tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Courtney Teasley. Again, my number one strength is I'm an activator. I turn thoughts into action. So I don't just stop at talks and conversation. I jump into igniting and activations. And so who I am from East Nashville, right here, right? I am a product of what I like to call the DAM community, D-A-M-M, the disproportionately affected, marginalized minority community. I am a child of the crack epidemic. I was raised by my grandparents in the Baptist church, where I channeled a lot of my anger into poems and plays, right, that confronted and addressed the systemic harms of Black Americans, such as Little Rock 9, Jenna 6, Emmett Till. I went to Middle Tennessee State University, where I got a bachelor's in political science, and then I went to Nashville School of Law while working full-time for the VA. I came out with absolutely no loans, and I opened my own law firm called the Courtney Teasley Law Firm. And I practiced there for the last 12 years in mainly criminal defense. I was a former criminal justice professor at Tennessee State University. I was an award-winning mock trial coach at my former high school, Stratford, former legal redress chair for the NAACP, where I filed complaints when lawyers didn't do their jobs. I trained many lawyers, many law students, and in 2022, I unseated a judge here that we found harmful, and we made Nashville history doing so. This led me to create the business that I currently have, where we created a framework. The business I created has a mission to end mass incarceration through proactive and innovative solutions and services. And so my work as a defense attorney and a judicial strategist and a legal educator has shown me firsthand that this system isn't just broken. It was designed to function exactly as it does. But I've also seen what happens when churches alongside the community step up and fight back. And so what is the problem? The crisis before us is a system rolling back our rights. As we sit here today, the criminal justice system is not just continuing, it's expanding. The rollbacks happening right now are calculated, strategic, and designed to increase the control of Black and brown communities through legal oppression. Many people were actually surprised to know that the case that ended affirmative action had been filed over 10 years prior to it ever coming to the Supreme Court. So they had that in play for a long time. They were playing chess, not checkers, correct? The federal government is stripping civil rights protections. The current administration is rolling back protections that were fought for during the civil rights movement and beyond. Voting rights, affirmative action, and policing reforms are all being reversed, reinforcing systemic barriers that disproportionately harm Black and brown communities. There's a push to reinstate police immunity and expand their power. There's talks of increasing police immunity, which means officers will have even less accountability for harming our people. Policies aimed at scaling back federal oversight on police departments allow for more unchecked abuses of power. This is actually happening, right? This is happening at the same time as an expansion in police funding, which means more police presence in communities that are already over-policed. Trump also reverses the order that eliminated the DOJ contracts with private prisons. That incentivizes mass incarceration. The reversal of this executive order that banned private prison contracts means that incarceration will once again be driven by profit, not justice. More prison equals more bodies needed to fill them. Expect a rise in overcharging, extreme sentencing, and the criminalization of minor offenses. But what does this mean for Black and brown people? The criminal justice system is America's most effective tool for system control, right? For social control. When you see these rollbacks, understand that they're not random. They are a coordinated effort to reassert dominance and silence the dissent. And if history has taught us anything, it's that when our legal protections are weakened, the first to suffer are those already at the bottom of this social hierarchy. So if we do nothing, the system will continue devouring our communities at a faster rate than ever before. And if we wait until people are already in the system to fight back, then we've already lost. And I assume many of y'all have already read and did dissertations on the new Jim Crow, mass incarceration in the age of color blindness. And I remember talking to somebody with Dr. G who told me that American Baptist College had actually had the author come down when the book was released. And I know that the book also helped create the Marshall Project and the new $100 million Art for Justice Fund. And so I assume y'all kind of already know these statistics, right, about Black Americans being more incarcerated. I know you do, Ms. Clemmy, right, and how they were 5 times more incarcerated. And so I guess the question is, since so many people know this, why is it still increasing? The new Jim Crow came out over 10 years ago. And the fleeting excitement that created many initiatives like the Marshall Project and the $100 million Art for Justice Fund did little to actually stop mass incarceration from increasing to a now whopping 6 times. Not just 5 times, 6 times. So simply knowing, preaching about, and discussing there is a problem is just not enough. Let us refresh our memories with a quick 5-minute lesson on the history of mass incarceration. MLK, marches, sit-ins. But what if I told you the biggest civil rights fight isn't in the history books? It's happening right now in the criminal justice system. The new fight isn't about getting seated at the lunchtime. It's about keeping Black and brown people out of the legal system that's designed to destroy them. But let's talk about how we get here. Now, remember, we're going to refer back to lesson 1. However, let me keep it really brief. The civil rights era ended, but the system adapted, right? In the 1960s, segregation was ending, but instead of calling Black people second-class citizens, the government found a new way to strip us of our rights. And it was by calling us criminals. But let's talk about why people don't truly fight for criminal justice reform today. People don't fight for criminal justice reform the way they fought for civil rights because the system convinced them that criminals don't deserve protection. Let's talk some key stats, right? 1 in 3 Black men will be arrested in their lifetime. 97% of criminal cases never go to trial, and people take plea deals just to avoid harsher punishment, right? And then over 600,000 people sit in jail every day just because they can't afford bail. And yet, when people hear mass incarceration, they think it's a problem for guilty people and not for all of us. And that's the trick of the system. So the problem with criminal justice reform is it's just too reactive, only step in after someone has been convicted. We see campaigns for sentence reductions, reentry programs, and parole reform. But what about stopping wrongful convictions before they happen? Let's talk about reactive versus proactive. Reactive, there's halfway houses, reentry programs, sentence reductions. These are good, but they happen only after people have already been harmed. Versus proactive, right? Fighting cases before a conviction, funding legal defense to stop wrongful convictions in real time, and teaching people how to navigate the system before they get trapped in it, like you're learning now. Imagine we put that same energy into stopping wrongful convictions that we put into helping people after they've already lost years of their life. Now let's talk about how people get into the system. The police, they're actually the gatekeepers of the system. And remember, police don't need much to get you into the system, right? They're only given a few months of training, and then they're sent into the streets with the power to decide who enters the system. And what is the standard they use? Remember lesson 2? One of the lowest burdens of proof we have, probable cause. Now, if you're struggling and don't remember what burdens of proof are, you should go back and go look at lesson 2. For the moment of rest, let's strategies are criminal defense organizing, funding full criminal defense needs, and criminal justice literacy education.
As we're learning.
So with criminal defense organizing, you're thinking of building community support around people fighting charges before they're convicted. And then funding full criminal defense needs. And that just means ensuring people have the resources to fully fight their case without having their hands tied. That can be hiring experts, investigators, or even multiple lawyers if they need. Criminal justice literacy education. And that just means teaching people how to navigate and challenge the system before they ever get arrested.
If you wouldn't wait until someone is drowning to teach them how to swim, then why are we waiting till someone is convicted to fight them?
The main takeaway here is that we can't just fight for people once they're locked up. We have to stop them from being convicted in the first place. So, our key takeaways are: 1, the criminal justice system is today's biggest civil rights fight. 2, most criminal justice reform is reactive, and real change is going to require proactive intervention. 3, police use the lowest burden of proof, probable cause, remember that's one of the lowest burdens, to get people into the system. And finally, 4, mass incarceration doesn't start at sentencing. It starts the moment someone is arrested. So class, you know, to get credit, you have to participate in the discussion. And our discussion conference today is going to be that people often see the civil rights movement as something like the past, right? It's marches, the sit-ins, and voting rights. But today, mass incarceration is one of the biggest civil rights issues we face. Why do you think society is less willing to rally around people that are caught in the criminal justice system compared to past civil rights fights? How can we shift the conversation so more people see this as a crisis worth fighting for? Drop your thoughts in the comments and or in the Google Classroom and make sure you get your grade. So I want you guys to consider that same discussion prompt, right? Why do people find it so hard to fight, right? Knowing that this is the new civil rights movement. And so, and also if you all are interested in our free criminal justice literacy 101 course, is currently being taught on TikTok. And also I'll have a link, anybody can join it. All right. The Black church has always been a force for liberation. So why not now? Mass incarceration is the modern day Jim Crow, a system of racialized control. And we are facing a moral crisis. Will the church remain silent or will it disrupt injustice? The church is responsible for pointing the world from what it is to what it should be. And today's captives are the 6 times more incarcerated Black and brown bodies being swallowed by the system. The oppressed are trapped in a criminal justice system built for control, not fairness. A system that has evolved from slave patrols to Black codes to Jim Crow to now mass incarceration. And MLK said in his book, when Negroes decided to march for freedom across the state, they boldly advanced to the Capitol itself in a demonstration of 30,000 people. 10 years before, a Mississippi Negro would have submissively stepped to the gutter to leave the sidewalk for a white man. 10 years before that, to plan a meeting, Negroes would have come together at night in the woods as conspirators. Wow, criminalized, right? Conspiracy is a crime. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke these words as a challenge, a reflection on how much had changed in a decade, but also a warning that progress never comes without a struggle. So if 10 years can shift the people from fear to action, what can we do in the next 10 if we are proactively focused on the most harmful system? But here's the hard truth. We're now more incarcerated, more criminalized, and more controlled than we were when Dr. King wrote these words. In the 1960s, they used poll taxes and literacy tests to silence us. However, in 2025, they use felony disenfranchisement and mass incarceration to do the same. In the 1960s, they used police dogs and fire hoses to control us. In 2025, they use over-policing, qualified immunity, and digital surveillance. And in the 60s, they called those movements radical, right? But in 2025, they criminalize protests, expand police protections, and double down on a system that cages us 6 times more than the majority. The same control, the same fear tactics, the same fight. So where do we go from here? right? Do we remain passive and allow history to repeat itself? Or do we reclaim the radical faith that propelled the civil rights movement and make sure the church stands once again as the center of Black liberation? We must decide, because history has already shown us what happens when we don't. The systems have evolved and changed, however, we have not. True disruption comes when we decide to change what has always been done. It is what the enemy has created a blueprint around, right? When I say we're playing chess, they're playing checkers and they're playing chess. Change comes when we disrupt their comfortabilities, we leverage our power and influence. So the criminal justice system has evolved. It has adapted. It has refined its methods of control. But our response, our tactics, our strategies, they have remained largely the same and or tapered off. The system upgraded, but our resistance did not. So let's think about it again. The old oppression, right? Slave patrols hunted Black bodies to return them to forced labor. New oppression, over policing and mass surveillance, track and monitor Black communities under the guise of public safety. Old oppression, Black codes and vagrancy laws made freedom a crime. New oppression, cash bail and overcharging made poverty a prison sentence. Old oppression, all white juries ensured convictions, no matter the evidence. New oppression, plea deals, lacking defense and prosecutorial power, ensured 97% of cases never see trial. Justice is denied before it ever begins. And then the old oppression, Jim Crow segregation control, where we could live, work, and thrive. However, the new oppression, felony disenfranchisement, strips us of political power and economic mobility. We know more, y'all. We see more, but we haven't changed how we fight. We still rely on reactionary tactics, waiting until the harm is done before we mobilize. We still focus on individual wins instead of the systemic shifts, right? We still treat mass incarceration like it's an isolated issue instead of a deliberate and calculated system of control. The church and community must adapt, or we will continue losing.
That's right. That's right. No doubt.
The system changed because it saw how we fought back. The question is, when will we change? But let's address the elephant in the room. Challenging mass incarceration requires something that civil rights advocates have long been reluctant to do: advocacy on behalf of those labeled criminals. Why haven't we changed? It's because the fight is uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. We're not just being asked to fight for the innocent. What? We're being called to fight for the guilty too.
Yes, yes.
And for many, that's where the hesitation creeps in, right? That's where the hesitation creeps in. The problem, the criminal stigma. We've been conditioned to believe that some people are simply beyond saving. This is what the media is going to push into our face, right? The system labels them criminals and we buy into it, distancing ourselves. Even in our movements, we advocate for the wrongfully accused while ignoring the millions of people who are overcharged, over-sentenced, or had no choice but to plead guilty. And so, here's the truth. Criminal does not mean disposable. Guilt does not justify injustice. Jesus himself did not discriminate in his advocacy. Jesus wasn't selective in who he freed, so why are we? Right? Luke 4:18 said he has sent me to proclaim release to the captives.
Yes.
Jesus didn't say only the innocent captives.
Okay.
He said the captive. And that's a period behind that, right? That's period. We have let respectability politics creep into our fight for justice. Too many of us are willing to march for the unarmed Black man shot by police. The exoneree proven innocent after he done 20 to 30 years of his life, right? It's over with. Or that straight A student who, they just made a mistake. But we hesitate when it's that gang-affiliated youth who's facing 25 to life. The woman who committed a robbery to survive, or the man who took a plea deal just to avoid a 50-year sentence. If we're not advocating for the labeled criminal, we are not advocating for justice. We must disrupt the idea that people deserve to be thrown away just because they've been convicted of something. The system relies on that mindset. It counts on us to believe the people inside those cages are different from us. So, what will it take? It will take a radical mindset shift, seeing people as human first, not criminal. A theological awakening, understanding that Jesus' liberation was for all captives, right? Yeah. And a commitment to the hard work, advocating even when it's unpopular. This is the real challenge of justice work. It's easy to fight for the innocent, but true justice means fighting for the perceived guilty as well. We must invoke our entire civic duties, not just that right to vote, and double down on all of our rights, especially our right to be innocent until proven guilty. In order to understand the importance of this principle, let's have another quick 6-minute lesson on the life of a case from arrest to trial.
When you hear someone got arrested, what happens next? Do they sit in jail, get a trial, take a plea deal? Let's break down exactly how a case moves from arrest to trial, and the key moments where you or your loved ones must assert your rights to protect yourself. Step 1, the arrest. It starts with probable cause. How does the case start? With an arrest. The police only need probable cause to arrest you. And probable cause is just a fancy way of saying probable, right? Think about that. Someone can lose their freedom based on a cop's belief that they probably did something wrong. That's right. This is an extremely low burden of proof. And the cops don't even need to be 100% sure. They don't even need to be right. And too often, they aren't. But the messed up part, probable cause is enough to lock you up today. Step 2, the lower court. So once you're arrested, your case starts at the lower court. And in Tennessee, it's called general sessions. However, it may be called district courts, justice of the peace courts, or municipal courts in different states. This lower court usually only has jurisdiction over misdemeanors and civil cases under a certain amount. Now, the burden of proof at this lower court level, what is it? Still probable cause. I like to use a chart to explain the different options at this level. Okay, so someone at this level, the lower court level, has different options. So let's discuss what those options usually are. Now, at this level, your case could be dismissed, retired, or nolly. Nolly stands for nolly pro se key. That just means the state is choosing not to prosecute. This is probably like the most favorable, right? This is the best case scenario, right? So your charges dismissed, or you have worked out something that's going to keep it off the record. Second thing you can do at this level is you can take a plea. That means you're just admitting guilt to a lesser charge to avoid any kind of trial, right? And then also at this level, you can do a criminal information. Now, doing a criminal information is basically admitting guilt to a felony at that lower court level. And then it's just going to skip you past the grand jury level and take you right on to criminal court so you can take that plea, right? That's criminal information. Now, a preliminary hearing is just a hearing to determine probable cause for 2 things, right? 1, the crime is committed, and 2, you're the one who committed that crime. And this is just where the judge is trying to see if there's enough to actually keep this case going. The burden of proof, probable cause, still very low, right? And then finally, at this level, you can potentially have a bench trial. Now, that is a trial before a judge. It's no jury, it can only be on misdemeanors, but guess what? The burden of proof is beyond a reasonable doubt at that level, right? But oftentimes, the state has to agree to have a bench trial at that level. It's important to note that at this level, if you have a preliminary hearing, right, and it's dismissed for whatever reason, the judge didn't find probable cause, then the state could go ahead and just present that evidence to a grand jury. And then also, if you have a bench trial, right, and you don't like the outcome, then you can appeal. And then you can go to criminal court and start that case just like it had proceeded there the normal way. Now, if at this level your case isn't dismissed or resolved, it's going to go to the grand jury. Now, what happens here? The best way I explain your lawyer, and your defense. Y'all are not indicted. The state presents its evidence. There's no cross-examination, no challenge to what they say, and the grand jury only decides, is there enough probable cause to charge you? This is why they say the grand jury will indict a ham sandwich. Unless, of course, that ham sandwich is a cop that killed a black man.
Okay.
When Mike Brown was killed in Ferguson, Missouri, the grand jury refused to indict the officer. Why? Because prosecutors didn't push the charges the way they do against everyday people. For most people, indictment is automatic. Now, if you're indicted, your case moves to criminal court, where the stakes are the highest. The burden of proof here, beyond a reasonable doubt. Finally, the state has to prove you did it, and not just say you probably did it. So, at this stage, you have options. You have a bench trial, that's where the judge decides, right? It's just a trial for the judge. You can have a jury trial, that's a jury of 12 peers that decides. Or you can also take a plea deal at the stage. And actually, this is where most people get scared into taking a plea deal. Don't forget, 97% of people take a plea instead of doing a trial. Why? The system is designed to make you feel like you can't win. Prosecutors stack charges to scare you. Bad lawyers don't do their job. And people can't afford the time, money, or risk of trial. The final takeaway is that the system is designed for conviction. At every stage, the system is working against you. At the rest, where probable cause, the lowest burden that's easiest to meet is all that's needed, and at the lower court level, where it's another chance to get rid of the case, but often it's just a stepping stone to the indictment. At grand jury, a secret process designed to send cases to trial, but that often tends to let cops walk free when they harm the community that they swore to protect and serve. And then finally, a criminal court. That's the first place where the state actually has to prove their case. So why there are 97% of people taking pleas? Because they are pressured into it. Because they don't have the resources or support to fight back. And because the system wants convictions, not justice. If more people exercise their right to trial, the system would truly collapse under its own weight. But most people often don't feel confident enough in their representation to go to trial. So, know your rights, know your options, and don't let the system trap you. Our discussion prompt for today is, did you know how a case moved through the system before this? What surprised you most? Drop a comment and let's chat.
So, seeing this, it should be easy to understand how easy it is to be trapped in this system, right? And just seeing that and learning exactly every step of the way. I know when I talk to juries, they're always surprised, right? Well, I have to tell them, I have to break it down for them. We went through a long time of probable to just get to you to hear beyond a reasonable doubt. To actually put some credibility, make the state really show up and do what they're supposed to do. So the entire criminal legal process is based on probability, not proof. And so we think about that 97% of people take plea deals based on a probably. That's wild, right? Does that seem fair? Sure don't seem fair when we the ones taking the brunt of it, 6 times more incarcerated. Okay, a case doesn't start with proof, it starts with an officer's opinion. A basic trained officer, often with minimal education, minimal legal knowledge, and significant unconscious bias, has the discretion to decide who gets forced into the system. Police don't need hard evidence to arrest someone. They only need probable cause. And probable cause is nothing more than a belief that a crime probably happened, and that's it. And from that one assumption, a person can be pulled in a system that's designed to break them. Now, think about who has historically been the target of this probably standard. The black codes made it probable that any black person not in service to a white person was a criminal. Poor white people were weaponized against black communities to police and enforce these laws. And the same racialized logic carries forward today, just under a different name. By the time a case gets to criminal court, most people have already lost. And why is that? Because the system is designed to wear people down before they ever get to trial. long pretrial detention for those who can't afford bail, overcharging and scare tactics to push plea deals. Defense lawyers are too overloaded with cases and the bare minimum. They're doing the bare minimum of anything at all. And the families may be financially drained. Most cases never make it to trial. And if you leave here, I want you to remember that 97% of people take plea deals. And then if that's the case, our fight must start before a case ever gets that far. Now let's talk about this system that's designed to exploit and not protect. I want you to look at this image, and this is the imbalance of power in the criminal justice system. On one side, you have a young black male. He has an underdeveloped brain, right? Science tells us that the prefrontal cortex, we know about this, isn't fully developed until age 25. This is the part of the brain that is responsible for your decision making, your impulse control, and your risk assessment. This is where they capture us at this age, right? Then the lack of education and financial resources. Many are funneled through underfunded schools and communities where legal and financial literacy are nearly non-existent. And then also they're raised to respect authority. Come on in here, black church. Many black and brown children are taught from a young age to comply, stay in their place, and to avoid questioning authority, even when that authority is abusing its power. Okay? So now look at the other side, the police officer, fully developed brain, training and legal knowledge, power, privilege, and experience in manipulating people into waiving their rights. Call it what it is. They're allowed to lie, use deception, and apply. This is in the law. This isn't the case. This is law. This is legal. They are allowed to lie, use deception, and apply pressure tactics to secure confessions and convictions. This is not an equal fight. When a young black person enters the system, they are at a disadvantage before they ever say a word. So I want you to think about how the system preys on these vulnerabilities, right? How they talk, how they dress, how they look are used for justifications for pretextual stops. And if we're going to be honest, we utilize that as justification of why they deserve whatever's happening to them, right? And why maybe it shouldn't concern you, because if they just pull their pants up. Yeah. Right. That's going to make everything right. Sagging pants, dreadlocks, hoodies. I mean, I'm just trying to be honest. Used to signal suspicious behavior, right? They're using that, right? And so the Driving While Black report even showed that in Nashville, right? That came out 2016. It showed significant racial disparity in traffic stops by our Metro Nashville Police Department, showing that black drivers were stopped compared to white drivers. I was going to go a step further. I'm going to be good. Okay. And then let's talk about the story of Khalif Browder, a case study in a rigged system, right? If you think, and I want y'all to stay here. If you come back tomorrow we'll do the proactive strategies and how we could have actually assisted Khalif Browder had he still been here today, how the community, the church could have helped in that situation. This is a 16-year-old black boy who was accused of stealing a backpack. And if you get a chance, go watch it on Netflix again. Just the first episode. It's so hard. Just the first episode. Go back and watch Khalif Browder on Netflix. And he was stopped and frisked in the Bronx. He had no lawyer present. It was a suggestive lineup and an unreliable witness. He was denied a speedy trial by the Bronx DA, but the problem is, if we do what our rights were, you can't deny me that. If the community came out and said, give me that, what's going on, it's going to happen. But okay, so he was jailed for 1,000 days at Rikers Island, 14 months in solitary confinement. He was a child with an underdeveloped brain. Living in one of the poorest congressional districts in America, his family lacked the resources to fight the case, and his lawyer, right, wherever they were, clearly was overloaded and very ineffective, and wasn't nobody holding him accountable. And so a child locked in a cage because he was poor and had a prior record which kept him from getting out when they scraped the money up to do so. A lot of people didn't know that. You just thought he was in there because he was poor. No, they had scraped the money up, but guess what? He had been made a felon when he was a little baby. He was a young child. He had been made a felon, and so what they did was have a probation violation on him, and then that wouldn't let him get out. And wasn't nobody there fighting for him in that now. Because we're going to talk about the real truth. We're not going to go gloss over it. This is a child tortured and driven to suicide for a crime he didn't commit. A child who needed intervention from his community but didn't get it in time. But if you just looked at him like you look at everyone else, you might think, oh, he's a criminal. Because he had been branded one early on, right? He had not done what he was accused of here. But this is where the church comes in. And tomorrow, again, we're going to break down exactly what faith leaders could have done to intercede before Khalid Browder became another name on a tragic list. And so now that we have an understanding of this system, let's truly have a look at its origins. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist, is the quote, right? And when we talk about systems of oppression, we often focus on the surface, right? The laws, the policies, the obvious brutality. But what if I told you that mass incarceration isn't just about locking people up? It's about conditioning them to accept control, okay? And so Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he wrote in Where Do We Go From Here about the psychological training required to make a perfect slave. And he pulled this from the historian Kenneth Stamp's book, The Peculiar Institution, which examined actual slave owners' manuals, okay? And how they condition enslaved people into obedience. But why does this matter today? Because systems of control, just like we talked about, they don't just disappear, they evolve. Slavery evolved into the black codes and convict leasing. Convict leasing evolved into Jim Crow, right? And segregation. Jim Crow evolved into mass incarceration in the criminal justice system that we have today. And the goal was never just to enslave bodies. It was to enslave your mind. And the perfect slave isn't just one in chains, is one who's been conditioned to believe that their oppression is normal, resistance is futile, and the system is just too powerful to challenge, right? That sound familiar? This is exactly how mass incarceration functions today. So the perfect slave framework isn't just history, it's still being used today. And so over the next few slides, I'm going to break down the 5 steps of this framework because I found it very interesting. As someone who's a business coach, and we always breaking down intellectual property, and the intellectual property is a framework that I've created, like I'm teaching you from. Well, it was a framework for slaves. Were they going around doing, workshops for this? This is what, it blew my mind. So, and as we go through them, I want you to ask yourself, how does this system still exist today? How has this framework been rebranded for the 21st century? And most importantly, how do we disrupt it? All right, let's go deeper. Unconditional submission, strict discipline. The slave must know that his master is to govern absolutely and he is to obey implicitly. This was the first rule of producing the perfect slave, breaking the will, stripping the autonomy, and instilling a fear of questioning authority. But here's the real question. Has anything changed? Let's look at the parallels today, because while the chains are gone, the conditioning remains. The school system, training obedience, not critical thinking. From an early age, right? Black and brown children are taught compliance over critical thinking. Zero tolerance policies disproportionately punish black students, criminalizing normal childhood behavior. Schools often reinforce the idea that challenging authority equals defiance, which equals punishment. They're not taught criminal justice literacy because knowing your rights would mean knowing how to challenge the system. Why do you think they don't teach us how the legal system actually works? Why aren't we taught how to advocate for ourselves legally from a young age? Because a well-informed, legally literate black child grows into a well-informed, legally powerful black adult. And that's a threat to the system. 2, the workplace, wage slavery and corporate control. So just like plantation labor kept slaves working under strict discipline, modern jobs control people through wages, policies, and punishments. Stay in line, don't question the system or you'll be fired. That corporate plantation thrives on black compliance and silence. And then policing in the criminal justice system. So this is the most extreme version of unconditional submission. Law enforcement. Black people are expected to obey immediately, without question, or risk death. Police are given absolute power over life and death, just like slave overseers, right? You question a cop, that's resisting. You asserting your rights, that's being uncooperative. You hesitate, oh, that's a threat. How often are we told in our communities not to challenge authority? Right? How often, how many of us were raised with the fear of what happens if we talk back to a cop? Right? This isn't just about policing, it's about conditioning. A system that survives on obedience must instill fear of resistance. The church's role in enforcing submission Let's discuss it.
Yes.
The weaponization of religion has long been used to justify obedience to unjust systems. Many sermons they have historically preached, and they talked about submission, endurance, and patience, but rarely righteous rebellion, right? Enslaved people were often told that their suffering would be rewarded in heaven, right? And today, too many churches still hesitate to call out injustice in real time. And so, let's not forget, Jesus himself was a disruptor, y'all. He was a disruptor. I mean, it's so clear as day, but true faith demands we challenge systems that harm the least of us. The system never needed change, it just needed control, right? All right, so now let's go to, let's hit this next one. Implant personal inferiority. One of the most insidious tactics of control was making Black people believe that they were inherently inferior. This was not just about physical bondage. This is framework number 2. This is the second part of the framework to produce a slave. Implant personal inferiority. Now, it was not just about physical bondage, it was about mental bondage. So slave owners knew that if a person believed that they were unworthy, unredeemable, and tainted, they would police themselves, right? The criminal stigma, right? So yesterday and today, enslaved people were taught that their African ancestry was a curse. So today, Black and brown people are still taught explicitly and implicitly that they are criminals by nature. So a black child is going to grow up surrounded by messages that say your communities are dangerous. Your schools are failing. Your speech is unprofessional. Your culture is threatening. What's that message? Right? You're broken. You're inferior, right? You need to be controlled, right? And the language and respectability politics. Who gets to be worthy? We see it in the way history is told. Come here, Rosa Parks. Over Claudette Colvin? Who's Claudette? Right? Because Claudette Colvin was sat on the bus and refused to give it up to a white person. She was 15. She was pregnant. You know what the Black church think about that? No, you can't lead this movement. Hello? I'm just talking about how our mindset, right? Are we trying to reframe our mindset? So we got to be honest about where it comes from and why we have these thought processes. So in playing this personal inferiority, and we also see it in how African-American English is ridiculed, regarded as unprofessional and consistently code switched, even though it is a nationally recognized language. Even the way we dress, our hair, our music, everything Black is criminalized. Unless, of course, it's controlled or co-opted. Right? Right? But here's the truth, y'all. You don't have to prove your humanity to anyone. You don't have to make yourself acceptable to be worthy of justice, right? And so now let's talk about our environments. The environments reinforce this false inferiority. Look at the places many Black and brown children are forced to grow up. We have food deserts, underfunded schools, over-policed neighborhoods, generations of poverty. So if you grow up in neglect, how do you not internalize the idea that you're disposable, right? We are not inferior. The system that is mass incarceration thrives because we are conditioned to believe we deserve it, right? The truth is this system is really unworthy of us. And the church, the community, and every justice seeker in this room must dismantle these false narratives and restore the truth. Next, make them stand in fear. That's the third thing to produce a good slave. Now, fear has always been the greatest tool of oppression. Slave owners knew that to control people, you don't just need chains, you need fear, right? And that fear, you got to fear that disobedience will bring unbearable consequences. Fear that resistance will cost you everything. Fear that the system is just too powerful to fight, right? So back then, enslaved people feared the master's power. Enslaved people were forced to witness brutal whippings, hangings, and punishments, right? And this wasn't just about punishing one person. It was about sending a message to everyone else. If you step out of line, this is going to happen to you, right? And that fear kept people in check. The fear made rebellion feel impossible. And so now Black and brown people, we fear the system's power. Today, the police and the legal system play that same role. And so we are constantly shown videos of that police brutality, right? We are constantly seeing aggressive arrests. We're constantly seeing deadly encounters. And the message is really clear. You better comply or you're going to be next, right? Speak up and we're going to silence you. Challenge the system and we'll take everything from you. Y'all know anything about Marilyn Mosby? Y'all remember Marilyn Mosby, Baltimore? One of the first ones to ever hold police accountable for killing a black man. What just happened to her? She's a felon now. All because of a wrong checked box on a mortgage application. And that's the information she gave them, trying to prove herself. She was trying to prove her name. She was like, oh, I ain't done nothing here. Take this information. They went through with a fine red comb and said, whoop, there we go. Gotcha. Where was everybody? Why was nobody doing any proactive defense? Everybody wanted to try to get the pardon from her. Now we coming together. Can we get a pardon for Marilyn Mosby? Why we weren't fighting, bringing attention to this in the beginning? All right, I'm off topic. Let me come back. All right, so the fear of police is systematic and real. Think about it. Black parents give their children to talk about how to survive police encounters. Entire communities avoid calling the police even when they need help. People take unfair plea deals because they're terrified of the alternative. We hesitate to fight back legally because we believe we can't win, right? This is exactly how the system wants it. If people are too afraid to resist, the system never has to change. If people are too afraid to resist, the system never has to change, right? And so the church and community's role is breaking the spirit of fear. What does the Bible tell us about fear? For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. The church must teach our people that they don't have to bow to this system. The community must stand together so no one fights alone. We must educate, organize, and disrupt so fear is no longer a weapon against us. Let us, number 4, mirror the master. Oppression is most effective when the oppressed start to police themselves. Whoa, right? Slave owners knew that true control, again, didn't come from chains alone. It came from convincing enslaved people to adopt the master's values, perspectives, and standards, right? Back then, enslaved people were taught to see the master as the standard. The master decided what was right and wrong. The master defined what was good and what was bad. The master's enterprise became the slave's purpose. Right? Right? If you wanted to survive, you had to accept the master's world as truth. Right? This laid the foundation for respectability politics. We always wonder where it came from, right? Now, black and brown people are taught to see themselves as the problem. So the criminal justice system has done what the slave system did. It convinces us to accept their definition of good and bad, worthy and unworthy, criminal and innocent, right? The good black person, that's the one who plays by the rules. You know that good black person over there, we love him, right? We do all the work with him. He does work with our community all the time. Well, that bad black person, oh, that's the one who challenges authority, right? That's the one stirring up too much trouble. Nah, we stay clear of them. And then the criminal is what? It just looks like someone looks just like us, right? It don't matter what it looks like y'all, right? And this is why so many of our own people judge and distance themselves from and fail to advocate for those caught in the system. The weaponization of respectability politics. Pull your pants up. Speak properly. Don't act like a thug. We are constantly told that our own culture, speech, dress, and behaviors make us less deserving of justice. We are trained to believe that if we just act right, the system will accept us. But history tells us the truth, right? Martin Luther King Jr. wore a suit and they still beating arresting him, right? Black men were lynched in their Sunday best. Were that black women brutalized in their maid uniforms, right? And so respectability never saved anyone from a system that was built to criminalize them, okay? So being nice, oh, okay, The church and community's role here is redefining the narrative. Jesus didn't conform to the Roman Empire's expectations. He disrupted them. Moses didn't teach the Israelites to impress Pharaoh. He led them on up out of bondage, right? And so our role is not to mirror the master. It's to break the master's mirror, okay? We must stop trying to prove we are worthy of fair treatment. We must stop looking down on our own people who don't fit into whitewashed standards. And we must disrupt the lie that our humanity is something we have to earn. Justice doesn't belong to the respectable few. It belongs to all of us. And in this final piece of the framework, we got to create a habit of perfect dependence, y'all. They want to make a real slave. The ultimate goal of oppression is not just control, it's dependence, right? The system doesn't just want to rule over us. It wants us to believe we cannot function without it. So back then, the slave was trained to depend on the master. Enslaved people were stripped away of their ability to be self-sufficient. Reading, that's illegal. Owning land, that's forbidden. Defending yourself, oh, that's punishable by death. The goal was to make them believe they were incapable of survival without the master. And one slaveholder said, it is necessary to impress upon Negroes their helplessness, to create in them a habit of perfect dependence upon their masters. That's what they said in their workshops where they were teaching other people how to have slaves, right? When you convince people they cannot survive without you, you don't have to force them into submission. Yes. They're going to do it willingly. Yes. Right? And so now the system conditions us to depend on it. They want us looking to them for the solutions to the problems they created. How does that make sense? I'm going to come back to that one. We wait for elected officials to fight for us. We rely on government programs that are intentionally underfunded and unreliable. We put our faith in a system that is designed to fail us again and again and again, right? And instead of building our own solutions, we keep waiting for the same system that harmed us to save us. And when the system fails, what happens? We feel powerless. We believe change is impossible. We stop fighting back. And that's the real trap. Dependence is the final chain. If they can make us believe that we need them, they never have to fear us rising up and challenging them. Breaking the habit of dependence. The church was once the center of black liberation, not the government. It was. The civil rights movement wasn't led by elected officials. It was led by faith leaders, community organizers, and everyday people who refused to wait. We cannot rely on the system to fix the problems that it created. We must fund our own legal defense initiatives. We must educate our own communities on their rights, and we must organize, disrupt, and hold power accountable. Now that we see the origins of the criminal justice system of oppression, let's take a look at the statistics of black people in America. MLK wrote in the 1960s, thus, half of all Negroes live in substandard housing, and Negroes have half the income of whites. That was 60 years ago. So what's changed? Well, oh, woo child. We like to believe things have improved, but when we actually look at the numbers, when we strip away the illusion of progress, we see that the racial wealth gap has barely moved, right? We still own less, we still earn less, and have fewer opportunities than our white counterparts. Mass incarceration, economic oppression, and systemic barriers keep us trapped at the bottom, just as they were designed to do. And so, boom. Here's the financial reality for black Americans. We make just $15 for every $100 a white person makes. The racial wealth gap is not an accident. And y'all, I had so many, I wanted to add them all in here, but I couldn't add every single statistic that was here. So I decided to give you all the, as you can see, the Google link, the look of all of them and the overview of them. And these are all, I utilize all this, the Pew Research Center. I mean, these are all actual links to credible data, right? And so the racial wealth gap is not an accident. It's the direct result of policies, laws, and systemic barriers designed to keep us financially disadvantaged. I want you to have a bird's eye view of everything where black Americans are financially. Black Americans hold the most federal student loan debt. We are pushed toward expansive education as the way out, Yet we're saddled with debt that keeps us financially crippled for decades. We are still economically locked out of opportunity, and without wealth, they know we don't have much power. The incarceration rates of Black Americans. So I've already went through that with you, but I wanted to just break it down so we can even look at Black Americans versus white versus Hispanic, right? And the incarceration rate of Americans, 6 times more incarcerated despite being less than 14% of the entire U.S. population. Black Americans make up nearly 40% of the prison population. As you can see, it shows you in 2021, again, the rate was 5 times more incarcerated. We have since increased. Mass incarceration is not about crime, it's about control. The criminal label has become the new justification for exclusion and oppression. Once you're branded a felon, you are locked out of housing, jobs, voting rights, and financial stability. This is the new Jim Crow, and this is why mass incarceration must be disrupted at the root. And with that understanding of this system, its origins, purpose, and where we stand in it, it's time for the second mindset shift. The least of us. From criminal to the least of us. Who are the least of us today? The 6 times more incarcerated, the over-policed, the under-protected. Jesus did not avoid the oppressed. He did not. He stood with them. He spoke for them. And he disrupted the systems that harmed them. And particularly my favorite story that I learned in the Politics of Jesus book, and I was so grateful to have been able to meet the Reverend Dr. Aubrey Hendricks at the Seven Do It Project. I didn't know he was going to be there. He signed my torn, tattered book. It was just great. Oh, I enjoyed my life. I was like a little fangirl again, like I was in school. I was like, yay! Jesus himself was a Galilean. And I was very particularly interested in the Galileans, right? A member of a marginalized community. So just as Galileans, they were dismissed, ridiculed, and excluded, Black Americans today are criminalized and dehumanized. Jesus' accent, his background, his people, everything about him was used to discredit him. It's the same way African American vernacular English, the same way I was talking about the nationally recognized language that we tend to be ashamed of, right? Is used to discredit and dismiss us, despite it being nationally recognized. Galileans were the Black Americans. They were the Ha'aretz. They were the people of the land, the poor agricultural workers, the ones seen as less than, the ones labeled as unworthy, right? They were even called thieves for not tithing properly to the rich priests. That's interesting. Jesus was one of the least of us, right? And yet he led a movement that changed everything. So what will we do for the least of us today? The Black church must reclaim its role in fighting for the oppressed, just as Jesus did. Mass incarceration is not just a political crisis, y'all. It's a theological one. In Proverbs 31:8, speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Ensure justice for those being crushed. Now, the Black church once led this fight for liberation, so what happened? The civil rights movement was born in the church. The Black church was the headquarters for the resistance. Pastors were the strategists and congregations were the foot soldiers. And this fight isn't over. Just because the chains look different doesn't mean they aren't still there. With slavery becoming the black codes, remember, black codes becoming Jim Crow. Jim Crow became mass incarceration. I want you to remember these things. The church is responsible for pointing the world from what it is to what it should be. But today, many churches have abandoned that role. We blame systems, not people. Jesus identified so completely with the oppressed that he made an astonishing declaration that today's political leaders and religious leaders too would do well to remember. As you have not done it to the least of these, you have not done it to me. We've identified who are today's captives, the 6 times more incarcerated, the over-policed, the underprotected. If Jesus stood against the systems of his time, how dare we remain silent in ours, right? Why the silence though? Some churches will speak on injustice, but only the socially acceptable ones. It's easy to stand against police brutality and viral moments, right? It's easy to feed the poor at Thanksgiving or solely just focus on that area. But who's standing for those labeled criminal by a system of oppression? The Bible calls us to defend the oppressed, not just the ones we're comfortable advocating for. Same system, y'all, same oppression, different packaging. Just like the Galileans of Jesus' time, Black Americans are ridiculed, criminalized, and dismissed. Our language, our culture, and our very existence is used to justify mistreatment. Now, guys, as I'm wrapping up here, I want to tell you a quick story of what happens when we choose to do nothing. All right? A man was accused of a crime even though he had the right to be innocent until proven guilty. He was indigent and couldn't afford to hire a lawyer, so he was appointed one. The lawyer he was appointed was among the highest paid court-appointed lawyers for many years, billing the cap of $100,000 yearly, right? Or close to it, very yearly. He took a lot of cases. He knew the state was against him, this man who was fighting the case. He knew the systemic harms the prosecutors had committed, often unchecked by anyone. He knew they offered better plea deals based on race. They stacked charges, withheld favorable evidence, withdrew pleas, created vendettas against certain defendants and lawyers. He knew about all of these things, right? He knew the biases and favoritisms of the judges, along with their same posturing and promises while on the campaign trail that failed to follow them to court. And he knew their media motivations and the tough on crime beliefs. But what he did not bet on was his lawyer being a part of the plan. This is what occurs when no one cares enough to focus proactively. Now it's gonna make me sign in to confirm my age. That's funny. Do I even have a, yeah, just touch sign in, yes. I never know passwords. Okay, great. There we go. I understand and wish to proceed. They know, y'all, and you couldn't hear everything he's saying. And I had to play that. I know this is a church, but that's real life. This is what happens. That was a lawyer representing a man. He's a court-appointed lawyer, and he took the majority of cases. And this man called him everything. You heard him, but of it, nigger, 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 nigger. Let's see if I can get us back to where we were. They know all of our weaknesses. They know the statistics, y'all. They know when someone will care and when they won't. Y'all ever know when abusers have to choose victims? They choose those that have no one to fight for them. They choose people that they think no one cares about, right? And this is what happens every day in this criminal justice system. This is why Jesus spoke up for the least of us, the most overlooked, the silence. This young man, he didn't even know how to handle that situation due to never being taught criminal justice literacy. So he didn't have a grasp on the law or how to properly direct his lawyer or handle issues that might arise, such as being called a name meant to resolve him back to the inhumane treatment a nigger received back in the good old days, right? He needed to be put in his place, you see. How dare you question me? Nigger, take this plea, sign on the dotted line, and get on out of sight, get out of mind, right? That's how easy this monster of mass incarceration is fed. Now I want y'all to times that by the number of counties in each state. Tennessee has 95 counties divided into 32 districts, and each county has a general sessions court. Remember, I taught you about that. And what happens in general sessions, which is the quickest opportunity to begin the trajectory into the criminal justice system, right? That's the lower court, where in small counties, rules are skipped. Pleasantries and respectability politics are the law, and little to no challenges occur. So when we're talking about most rural and small town congregations, Dr. G, what do you think is happening there? Show not the Lord's work. Because this was in Davison. But no one cared. No one court watched. No one wrote a bar complaint. No one contacted the lawyer. No one had concern from the community. And no one contacted the judges that kept appointing him the cases. When the lawyer did file a complaint through the NAACP as the legal redress chair, the board did nothing and said that the allegation was unfounded. Who is this young man? It doesn't matter. He represents the experience of the great majority of the 6 times more incarcerated in the United States. And so the final mindset shift we have to do today, you all, as we close, is from reactive to proactive. We cannot continue to operate with an outdated, ineffective strategy. Reactive church ministries wait until harm has already been done. Proactive justice ministries step in before the system swallows another life. The church must shift. Jesus didn't just minister to the oppressed, he defended them. A reactive ministry would look like waiting until someone is in prison to care versus a proactive ministry fighting to keep them free in the first place. This isn't just a name change, it's a mission shift. And on tomorrow, we're going to dive into tangible action steps that take justice ministries from reactive to proactive. And I have a free resource to give you all who come out on tomorrow. Super excited because we're going to move from we've done the mindset portion. This was the hard work. Now we're going to get into the part, what we can do. What is tangible? What can we actually do? What's a blueprint? And you all can grab this. I want to make this. You all, if you all can get the link there, I have a free resource for 7 things that churches can do to, Lord Jesus, I forget the name of it, but it's to basically disrupt to have a social justice ministry, to go from reactive to proactive. That's what it is. I think that's the one I sent to you, Dr. G. All right, y'all, I want to thank y'all for coming. Thank you so much. I appreciate y'all for having me. See y'all tomorrow. Okay. Thank you. And I'm over time, so if y'all have any questions, we'll have more questions, time for questions on tomorrow.